Welcome to A1R Psychic Radio here on Moonstruck TV with Amanda Hall Psychic, all the way from the Gold Coast in Australia. Well, it's official, the G20 and the Glasgow Summit is over, the world leaders have gone home, and I must say it's one of the very rare times that I'm embarrassed and ashamed to be called an Australian after what our Prime Minister didn't agree to, like the rest of the world did with the targets for 2030 and 2050. So that's enough of that. If I get started on that, we'll have a rotten show. So this week it's been an interesting week in many, many other ways. Lots of people have started to find that they're coming out of lockdowns and starting to really start to regain their lives again. I know here in Australia, there's parts of Australia opening up and people are getting excited as we move towards the festive season of the year. And that's why I have a little rule in my house. We have a big horse race here on the first Tuesday of the month called the Melbourne Cup. Now, officially after Melbourne Cup is over, that's the start of Christmas for me, and it always was that way when my children were little. They knew once the horse race was over, out came the Christmas decorations and we started to get ready for Christmas. So I thought I'd bring that tradition back this year. Melbourne Cup was yesterday here in Australia, so let's start the Christmas festivities, and I think it's no too soon for all of us. We've had such a hard year. Let's sort of try and look towards something that's bright, that's positive, that's festive, that brings us some hope and some joy as we move into the end of the second year in our pandemic, and we hopefully have a much, much better 2022 heading towards us. So I know for many of you that this has been one of the biggest struggles of your life this year, and you probably don't feel too festive at the moment, but let's try and start to bring that energy in early. Sort of, to me, Christmas isn't about the gifts that we give and receive. It's about the joy. It's about the hope. It's about the positivity and looking forward to a better life, that it gives us renewed hope and renewed faith in fellow human beings and what might be around the corner in our lives, that we can sort of lighten our soul and lighten our hearts and start to look to a more positive, hopefully better future than what we're leaving behind. That's what Christmas means to me, and that's why I think it's such a magical, special time of the year where people can start to dream and set things in motion and hopefully to make this place a better world that we all live in. So this week's Simply Tarot card of the week, and Simply Tarot did turn 16 on Halloween, is the Temperance card. Now, when people look at this card, they automatically think, oh, I don't think I particularly like this one. It is the card of money restrictions. Now, when I talk about money restrictions, I don't know that there's a person on the planet, unless you're Bill Gates, that hasn't had a few money restrictions in this last 12 to 18 months. We've all had to make money stretch and move and be a bit like elastic in many, many ways as things have changed in our world during the pandemic. So I think we're still finding a little bit of money restrictions or trying to gather a bit of money together as we head towards the festive time of the year where we know that our expenses are going to be higher. And we need to be sort of being aware of what we're going to be spending money on. So maybe it's the time to get back into the real spirit of Christmas and not necessarily make it a commercial Christmas, but the gift of joy, of love, of giving somebody something that's handmade or even just a phone call. I mean, maybe making them a batch of cookies or something like that is more important to people than some expensive gift wrapped up in expensive paper. Okay, so the secondary part of this card is testing of the water. Now, she has one foot dipping in the water. So to me, that's testing the waters of life. Sometimes we need to stick our toe in the water to see whether it's too hot or too cold or whether it's just right. And are we ready to take the plunge? Are we ready to take on new opportunities, new things that could be coming into our lives? So it's a matter of testing the waters, and we can see her tipping the water backwards and forwards from one cup to the other. Again, sort of not quite ready to maybe take that plunge yet or make that final decision. And that's okay. Sometimes we need to be in this position where we just say, I just need a little bit more time. So interestingly enough, astrologically, each week it seems to be a bigger and bigger week than the last week, and I seem to be saying that now for quite some time. But what struck me today when I was getting ready for the show, and I always look at where the planets are just only probably an hour before the show, to sort of get a feel of what's actually going on around the world without any preconceived ideas of me putting my own spin on it. I like to look at it in its raw state. And the first thing that jumped out at me this morning from the charts was here in Australia was the fact that Mercury, the planet of communication, is sitting in Libra and would have been sitting in Libra while these conferences were going on. Now, when we've got Mercury sitting in Libra, it usually means we're trying to find the way to play nicely in the sandbox, that we're all supposedly got our listening ears on. We're all supposedly trying to find the truth and the balance in the matters, that we're all on our best behaviour, and we're not so much trying to impress each other, but we're all trying to listen very carefully and try and see it from the other person's point of view without sitting in judgment before we have to make a final decision. Now, I found that rather interesting, that the fact that Mercury's been there through this whole conference, but is conjunct or holding hands Mars, the planet of action, but Mars is sitting in a different sign. Mars is sitting in Scorpio. Now, Mars actually likes and feels very comfortable in Scorpio. Mars in Scorpio, if you have that in your chart, which not many people do, is usually the sign of a great strategist, of somebody that can be sort of like a general in the army, that they can make decisions, they can chart a course, they can have strategies that nobody else would even begin to think of. And I always say to people, if someone's got Mars in Scorpio in their chart, be careful, because you'll never win an argument with them. They are such the great strategists, and they don't tire. They never give up. They don't give up till the bitter end. So I found that this was an interesting combination to have while this conference was going on, that we had people there sort of smiling and backslapping and shaking hands and saying it's lovely to see you. But at the same time, they were there for their own agenda. And they were there for their own agenda at any cost. It didn't matter who they offended or what they said that may not have been cordial to other people, or even been respectful of other nations and their journey and the things that are important to their people and their economy and their opportunities moving forward. And not every nation or every country in the world is in the same position or is as affluent as some of the bigger nations that were there. So it's really interesting, because I don't know that there was a lot there. That I'm not saying there wasn't a lot achieved. I think there was, but I think there was also a lot that was done with a smile on your face at the same time as I've got the knife out and stabbing you in the back. So it'll be interesting to see the fallout from this conference and the G20 over the next coming weeks, to see the way that the media portray it and the things that actually come out, things that might have been leaked or said out of context or shouldn't have been said at all, or people didn't have their listening ears on or were rude and didn't consider another nation's feelings or considerations. So there might be quite a bit of that to watch in the next few weeks in the media. So it'll be actually quite interesting. For us mere mortals, it may just be that you've been feeling uncomfortable in this last week, where you've gone to have a conversation with somebody that you felt was important, and then when you got there to have the conversation, all of a sudden everything that you had worked out in your mind has disappeared, and all of a sudden you're standing there like a blithering idiot saying, well, I really did have something important to talk about and I can't remember what it was. Now the person's thinking to themselves, well, it can't have been that important. That's the sort of thing that Mercury in Libra can do particularly when it's holding hands with Mars in Scorpio. It sometimes can get us all G'd up and ready to go, and then sort of all of a sudden Mars just sort of takes all the information out of your head and says, not now, you're too confrontational, or it's not the right time, or maybe we better leave it till a little bit later on. So just be aware that your thinking will become more clear and concise. If there's those conversations that need to be had, then maybe the next 7 days is the time to be looking to revisit those and maybe sort of organise meetings or sit down and have that chat with the family member if that's what's needed. And some of you might decide that really, the urgency of that is past, or I've resolved the situation and I'm glad I never had that conversation. So for whichever way it plays out for you, it's important to just run with it. Now we have the Sun, which is in Scorpio at the moment. And I always find this a sort of, for me personally, a difficult time of the year, probably because I'm a Sagittarian and I just love Christmas and I love everything to be bright and positive and bubbly, and I'm always trying to find the brighter side of life rather than the negative side of life. I find the Scorpio energy very heavy and very, very difficult to sort of sift through, because it is a very emotional sign, but it's a very deep emotional sign where we're asked to sort of really dig deep inside our souls to look at where things are coming from. So I quite often find that this is a heavy going time of the year where, for me professionally, I find that a lot of my clients are really reassessing things, are finding it difficult to come to terms with what they achieved or didn't achieve for the year. And a lot of people just find that they just sort of want to take a little bit of a breather before they get into the really busy part from the 22nd of November or November 22nd, when things start to really ramp up towards Christmas, that they've got to have the momentum and the energy to do so. So if you're one of those people that feels a little bit flat or feels that you need to take a little bit of downtime or pamper yourself a little bit, or just spend some time by yourself, allow yourself that luxury, even more so this year. It's very important because we need to be doing that. We need to be honouring ourselves a little bit more. We can't possibly begin to help somebody else if we're not looking after ourselves. Now, we also have the sun conjunct what's known as one of the Arabian parts, which is the part of fortune. Now, this doesn't mean necessarily we're going to find that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow with the leprechaun, but it means where we find things that in our lives that we can feel happy about, we can feel fortunate about, we can feel that we can move forward. And this is why more so this year than any other year, I want you to sort of really focus on looking after yourself. If you really feel that need to spend some time by yourself or to have some chill out time or take yourself for a walk or go for a swim or do whatever it is that makes you feel happy and relaxed and calm, then you need to make sure that you do that, because we've got to do this. We've got to allow ourselves to get in touch with ourselves so that we can find our own part of fortune. Maybe we can find some answers to some pressing issues or some direction for next year, or just maybe we just sort of say, well, I've dealt with everything and I'm really pleased with myself that, you know, I've come out the other side a lot better shape than what I thought I would after the crises or the situations or the changes that I've been through. There'll be many, many people that'll be making decisions over the coming months about their employment, whether they're happy where their job is, are they happy where they're living, do they want to make a relocation, do they want to make a move? A lot of people have moved back to what they considered their roots or what they used to call home, where they grew up, looking for that, I suppose, that security. That life became very uncertain during the pandemic, and it's just nice to go back to somewhere that's familiar, that makes you feel safe. So I know that there's still a lot of people that are sort of contemplating that sort of weren't in the first or second or third wave of that. But now when a lot of things have sort of settled and they've had plenty of time to look at things and looked at how their job fed or whatever, or now they're working from home and they can work remotely, so they don't necessarily need to stay in a particular location to keep gainfully employed, that it gives them the opportunity to make choices and decisions for them and their family, which will overall improve their life and their lifestyle. So it's a very important time. So don't waste this Scorpio energy. You may be one of those people that's been contemplating that. Well, then give it some airtime now and look at it very carefully for what it is. I'm also going to say to you, we've got an opposition at the moment from the sun and the part of fortune, with Uranus, the planet of the unusual and unexpected, is in Taurus. So it's going to feel a little bit like a push-pull situation. It's going to be 1 minute there's going to be this amazing breakthrough or a breakthrough of thoughts and energies and things like that. And then all of a sudden we go back and we think, oh, is that really what? Is it wishful thinking? Is it the right thing to do? Just take your time. There's no rush. Just because something's coming to your head or an opening comes up, unless the opening's only got a very short window that you've got to give an answer on, then don't be in too much of a hurry to make a decision that you may not feel ready to make yet. I want you to make sure that this is times where we have those light bulb moments where we take the time to write it down or, you know, sift through it. We don't always have to act just because an opportunity is there, unless it's pressing us for a deadline. Of course, we still have the usual things like Pluto sitting in Capricorn, has been there since 2008, still trying to help us transform the world and sort of get the world on board with climate change, that everybody gets on the same page and sings from the same hymn sheet. I don't envy Pluto with his job in this last, couple of years of being there, but I'm sure there's more focus now on what's happening around the globe than there was back in 2008 when we went into the financial crisis. This is a global crisis in a different way. We've been in a pandemic. We're still in a pandemic. And not only that, the globe is warming and we need to do something about it yesterday. So we're going to take our first call, which is Ashley on Ortonville in Minnesota. Are you there, Ashley?
Yep, I'm here.
How are you today, Ashley? How can I help you? Do you have a question for us? That's good, sweetie, and I apologise for not getting the correct pronunciation of your location.
That's okay.
Do you have a question I can work with, sweetie?
I do. So I have a question. I recently saw a different clairvoyant who And so when I did that reading, she had said that the person that I was with, like, there was going to be an engagement at the end. We have since then, like, broken off, stopped talking. I just want to make sure I'm making the right choices with that. Like, doing the non-attachment, I've distanced myself from that. I just want to make sure I'm making the right choice.
Okay, just because a psychic or a clairvoyant has said to you that they can see an engagement ring and everybody jumps to the conclusion it's the person that you're currently with because that's who you think at the time and you think, oh, you beauty, this is what I've been waiting for. And then all of a sudden you start to sort of question whether or not this is right for you. Is this what I really want? Is this person the right fit for me, not just now, but in 10 years' time, 20, 30, 40 years' time. And sometimes the answer is no. And it's just because they've seen an engagement ring. And this is something, and look, even after 40 odd years in this sort of work, I can still fall into the same trap because it's shown to you it's there, they're in a relationship, and you think, oh, well, it's got to be this one. You don't sort of push it a little bit further to see whether it is this relationship or whether it's another one. I can honestly share with you, Ashley, I believe that you've made the right choice. You didn't make this decision lightly about calling off the relationship. You knew it was heading to something serious. You knew that's where his head was and where yours should have been. But every time you went there, it was like, this feels wrong. You got something grabbing you in the stomach that said, hang on a minute, this is not right. So we have to follow that. Now, it doesn't mean that, this was the only opportunity you're going to have to ever get engaged and get married and live happily ever after. I always believe there's more than one choice. So maybe the way you should look at the engagement ring was, okay, it was there. It would have been offered in that current situation. You chose to turn it down. So maybe look at the engagement ring as being a symbol for you being on the right path. You know what I mean? That you're engaged to yourself, that you're not going to allow yourself to go into a situation that feels wrong. I can see a brand new dark-headed man coming into your life in the early part of 2022, and I can assure you there is no question marks around that one. You really will fall head over heels in love with him. He's very strong, he's dynamic, he's cheeky, he's got a nice smile, he's got a good job, and the two of you really click. And it's like you start a sentence, he finishes it, and it's a really different relationship. This one that you've just walked away from, it was always like hard work. It was always like I was pushing the wheelbarrow up the hill. It was never like I was on the flat, and a good relationship should not be that hard of work. It shouldn't be hard work, in my opinion, Ashley. Look, I'm not saying even the best of relationships don't have a disagreement from time to time. They do. But it shouldn't be that you have to put in this tremendous effort to make it work. If you have to do that, it's not right. Walk away.
Yep.
You haven't made the wrong decision, sweetie. You've made the right decision for you in every possible way. And, you've made the right decision for him too, because he can now go on and find somebody that he's really suited to, not somebody that he's got to make it work with either. So, next year's just going to be an amazing year. Look, I'd be really surprised if you meet Mr. Wonderful before March. That doesn't mean don't go out. I'm just saying that's when they showed it to me as being the strongest was after Valentine's Day. But I think you're going to feel in the next couple of weeks, you're going to feel like you're just so free that you could sort of fly high and you haven't got a care in the world, and you keep just thinking to yourself, gee, I'm glad I never went through with this. I would have been really miserable. And that's not the way it's meant to be. You're listening to yourself, and that's the greatest gift you can give yourself is listen to your inner voice.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure he's upset and disappointed and all that, but he'll get over it. People don't die over broken. They're disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, he's the one who ended it. And then, after, sitting down and realizing, he was slightly narcissistic. So, I mean, that's why I'm that whole thing, strings you along. So I'm am I making the right choice? I don't know.
Yeah, but it's interesting, isn't it, that he made the choice to end the relationship when you were the one that was questioning it. So, that makes me sort of think that he thought he had to get in first. You know what I mean? He was sensing you were unhappy and he couldn't possibly let you beat him to the punchline, so he did it first. Because I'm picking up he's really disappointed that the relationship finished.
Oh, well, good.
Yeah, I think so too. Like I think it's time he sat down and put the mirror in front of himself and had a very, very good, long, hard look at himself and the way he behaves and how he treats people. And not just
Mhm.
you, but
Yep.
everybody in his life. He's got a lot to learn yet. I
Yep.
don't like to say people are higher up the karmic ladder than someone else, but I will in this instance. He hasn't even got on the first rung of the ladder and you're nearly at the top. So, it would never have worked.
Yes, yes. Okay. That is the only question I really was curious about.
Okay, Ashley. Well, it's been lovely to talk to you, sweetie. And look out for that gorgeous dark-headed man with the twinkly brown eyes.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, sweetie. Have a nice Christmas. We're going to talk with Sage in Los Angeles in California. Are you there, Sage?
Hello?
Hello, Sage. Hi, Sage. How are you?
Yeah, this is
Do you have a question I can
hi.
work
This
with?
is
Hi. Do you have a question I
yes,
can
I
work with,
do.
please, Sage? Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
You mind?
I was wondering if the guy at the store is someone that I can proceed as far as a romantic interest, or is he a romantic interest? I'm sorry, I'm not making sense.
No, you are making sense. Does he have sort of mousy brown hair?
Yes, he does. He's really tall.
Yeah, but I had a man with mousy brown hair that to me almost was like boyish looking. It was sort of like I'm a little bit uneasy around women, as if he didn't have a lot of experience in the dating game. Is that
Yeah,
the
he's
same
very
one?
standoffish.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, you're calling it standoffish. I'm going to say that I think he's a little bit nervous around you. He sort of doesn't have a lot of experience in sort of flirting with women and, sort of that sort of thing. Look, I really like him. I don't think there's anything wrong with him. I think you're just going to have to let him get his own confidence in his own time. I mean, when you need to go to the store, be yourself, but make your purchases, say hello, how's the day, whatever, have a conversation. I don't know that he's going to ask you out from the store, but I do think over the coming months, the two of you are going to end up being in some social locations outside of his work where he will seem like a different sort of person. He's out with his friends and he might have had a couple of drinks and sort of just seems a lot freer in himself and a lot more chatty and things like that. That's when I think the friendship is really going to ramp up, where you spend a bit of time together, you have some fun, and it's sort of something that seems to be a fairly ongoing thing. Now, I'm not sure whether when you first bump into him on a social situation, that seems to be sort of like a party or something like that. But there is someone else, somewhere else that you go to sort of fairly regularly. And I'm just going to use 10-pin bowling as an example. Like, I go bowling every Wednesday night and he just happens to join a league and be part of the same place. It'll be something like that where you keep bumping into each other. And that's where I think the friendship/relationship will really start to blossom. Look, darling, I'd be really surprised if anything gets off the ground before the end of this year. He is still slow. He really has to be really confident in himself before he'll ask you out on a date. Once we get to that point and we actually do go on a date, then I think things will move fairly quickly after that. It's like he's got to make sure that he's not misinterpreting that you really are into him. You're not just being friendly or being polite. And I could honestly say to you, Sage, I don't know that he's had a lot of experience with dating. I can see two past love interests there, but I'm not even sure that they were really serious. I think they might have been more serious in his mind than they were in the actual reality of life. So we've got to make allowances for that. But I really like him. He's a nice guy. I don't know that he's going to
What
stay
about my
in that
neighbor?
job. Pardon? What about your neighbour?
Yeah, he's like store like on my left side. He has his home, and he seems like he's a bachelor. He's older, tall.
Yeah, I don't
His
think
name's
I'm not picking up any sort of romantic signals from him. I'm not saying he finds you unattractive or anything like that. I just don't think his headspace is in romance with you or anyone else at the moment. I just sort of feel he's in the process of reorganising his life. I'd be really surprised if he came forward and sort of showed any romantic interest. I mean, he's always going to be pleasant and polite, but I don't His head's not in romance at the moment, not for a long time.
Oh, okay. What about my Matt? I, he's the manager here for the complex where I live, and he acts like really standoffish, and I'm wondering why. Did I do anything wrong?
No, I don't think you've done anything wrong. I just think he likes to keep everything very professional. I don't think that there's anything untoward there. I just think he's got a lot going on at the moment. He's got a lot of stuff on his plate, not just work-wise, but in his personal life as well. No, nothing that you've done wrong.
Oh, okay. Any other possible romantic interest?
Anyway, I think he's sort of making a decision to leave that role.
Oh, okay. And any other romantic interest coming up?
No, not at this point, Sage, and that's where we're going to have to leave it, sweetie. We've come to the end of the show. So the show goes very, very quickly. So for those of you that sort of are going to join me and get into the festivities of Christmas very early, that's wonderful. But this week it was a special friend of mine overseas that her daughter got married, and I know that there's a special someone or a number of special somebodies that would be smiling down from above, but one of them was her late father's dearest friend was David Cassidy. So I know those two Daves would have been smiling down as proud as punch from up above. And for the happy couple overseas, I know that David would be singing this song for you guys, I Woke Up in Love This Morning. So I want to wish the happy couple every happiness, and I'm glad it was such a successful, huge, wonderful day. So until next week, keep smiling, get your Christmas decorations out, and let's start putting those Christmas carols on the turntable. And my favourite Christmas carol is My Christmas Card to You by David Cassidy and the Partridge Family. So until next week, bye for now.